All right, let's turn to Matthew chapter 2 again. And I just want to look really at kind of one verse. We won't read the whole chapter. We've done that a couple, 3 times. Verse 11 says, "And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh." Someone wrote, "May God forbid that we should present our gifts and withhold ourselves." I believe that giving is something that's right to do. I believe it's biblical. People often give presents to their kids but withhold themselves from their children. They do that for friends but withhold themselves. They hold back. God requires our persons before he asks for our purses. Let's discuss, first of all, what is a gift? Now, I realize you're smart enough to know the definition, but something given to show appreciation, that's what the definition is. Friendship or support. You know, you can give somebody a gift simply by being a good friend, by sometimes supporting them when they're going through some difficult times. One thing I try to do when I conduct a funeral is I try to be a friend to those that are going through it and try to be there to support them if they need something. A young lady said to me the other night, she said, "I have to read something I wrote to my grandpa." And I said, "Okay." And she looked at me and she said, "Will you stand beside me when I say it?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I will." And today that little girl got up and she read something to her grandpa. It was only about a paragraph long. And she didn't make it through it. And she just grabbed me and hung on to me for probably a minute anyways. And finally finished what she had to say. Sometimes you just need to be there for somebody to lean on. And you want to give a gift to somebody, just be there. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. Just be there. So a gift, by definition, is given to show appreciation. It's given because of friendship. It's given because we support something. Or it can also mean this: a natural ability or talent, which is often the way we look at it, because when we look in the Bible, we look at gifts in that manner. And that's okay, because that's really what it is. We say, "Boy, you've got a gift to do that." That means something natural. Some people have gifts, they do things other people can't do. And I know some people say, "Well, I wish I could do that." Well, maybe you can do something they can't do. Everybody has a gift. Let's turn over to Exodus 28 a minute. Exodus chapter 28. And verse 38. "And it shall be upon Aaron's forehead, and Aaron may bear the iniquities of the holy things which the children of Israel shall hallow in all their holy gifts. And it shall be always upon his forehead, that they may be accepted before the Lord." Turn to Leviticus 23 a minute. In just a couple verses, verse 38. "Besides the Sabbath of the Lord, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vows, and besides all your free will offerings, which ye give unto the Lord, also in the 15th day of the 7th month, ye shall have gathered the fruit of the land. Ye shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. And on the first day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. So this is the Feast of Jehovah, and they are offering gifts. It's something expected by God. When he's telling them here, there's something he expects you to do. God expects giving, okay? Expects us to be givers. And only because God was the first giver. Giving, just in case you want to know, giving wasn't invented by Santa Claus. You'd be led to believe that man's in charge and he can't even tell the truth. Deuteronomy 16, man, what I'm trying to show you here is God expects giving because God first gave. God was the giver. He gave clothing to Adam and Eve. Deuteronomy 16, verse 15. 7 days shalt thou keep a solemn feast in the Lord thy God in the place where the Lord has chosen, because the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thine increase and all the works of thy hands. Therefore thou shalt surely rejoice. 3 times in the year shall all the males appear before the Lord thy God in the place where he's chosen, in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles. And they shall not appear before the Lord empty. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord. So 3 times a year, God expected all the males to appear before the Lord, and when they came before him, they were not to come empty-handed, but they were to bring something they could give. So I think God expects us to give because it's something that helps us in our life, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Numbers 18, if you would. And can I say, for the most part, I think America has been a giving nation for many moons. I think many peoples around the world have been taken care of by the things that we've given. I think probably a good majority of people in America are givers. I think they'll give their time, they'll give their money, they'll give their goods to help other people, to tornado victims, whatever it may be, they'll help out, I think, in the long run. I think America's a giving nation. And I would like to think that most people in church are givers. I would like to think that. I think I've been here long enough to say for this church that most of the people in this church are givers. I don't know what extent they're givers, but I believe they're givers, or we couldn't afford to keep the doors open. And if you're not, I would suggest you probably should get started, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. Numbers 18, in verse 6. And I, behold, I have taken your brethren the Levites from among the children of Israel to you. They are given as a gift for the Lord to do the sacrifice of the tabernacle of the congregation. So we have what a gift is, then we know what kind of gifts are there. First of all, there are people who are gifts. Let's go over to Ephesians 4 a minute. Have you ever heard somebody say something like this of somebody, or maybe you said it yourself? Boy, you're a godsend. I sure needed somebody. That means that person was a gift to you. All right, Ephesians 4. It's a passage you're familiar with. But let's see, verse 10. Well, no, verse 11. And he gave some apostles and some prophets and some evangelists and some pastors and teachers. Whoops, I'm on the wrong place. Let's go back up here. It's verse 8. I'm headed down for something else here. Wherefore he saith, when he had ascended up on high, he led captivity captive and gave what? Okay. And those gifts, which I was going to read down here, are apostles and prophets and evangelists and pastors and teachers. So when you stop thinking about it, the people who help you spiritually are gifts.
Right.
And anybody in the church building could be a gift if they want to be. But I think a lot of people hold themselves back because they don't want to become involved. When I came here in 1976, my first funeral was Mrs. Wilson. She and her husband were members of the church, and she got sick and died, and I had to go down to one of the harbors, Harbor Beach or Harbor, whatever, on this side of the state anyways, and conduct a funeral. And I don't remember who the second one was for sure. And at that time, McLaren. All right, who owned the funeral home? Was it McLaren? No. Was it? Sterno McLaren. Okay, it was McLaren. All right. And he said something to me about funerals, and I said, look, I don't do this for money. If you ever need somebody's looking for a preacher, I'll be glad to do it. And that's how that thing got started. I just said, hey, I'm available. I'll be a help, I'll be whatever I can do to somebody. And I don't know how many funerals I'd have to go through and count them. I've conducted the people I didn't even know who they were. They just needed a Baptist preacher. And I guess I fit the bill. So you got to learn sometimes to extend yourself. You got to put yourself out there. You won't believe this, but I'm going to tell it to you anyways. When I became the chaplain for the county back in September, was it? No, it was back in August, yeah, because I was at the fair. And the sheriff told me, he said, look, I've put out your email address and your cell phone number to all the deputies. I said, okay. So I get the phone call the other day and somebody says, hello, Pastor Heaton, this is so-and-so, and I'm so-and-so's daddy, and he died, and he wanted you to do his funeral. And I went, sure. So when I got to their house to discuss the thing with them, I said, I have a question. And this young lady said, yes. I said, how in the world did you get my cell phone number? And she said, well, my I think it's her cousin, might be, yeah. He knows so-and-so in the sheriff's department, and he asked him if he could get a phone number for you. And then I found out this man had been asking 6 months ago to talk to me. It's been a rough day, folks. It's just been a rough day. Sometimes you just got to put yourself out there. And maybe it takes some time out of your life, and maybe you don't always get what you want out of it, but if God gets what he wants out of it, that's what really matters. Romans 1. And Paul talking to the Roman saints, and he says in verse 11, for I long to see you, that I may impart unto you some spiritual gift. And you know what? Remember what Paul said about ye who are spiritual? And sometimes you don't think you are, but maybe you're spiritual enough to impart something to somebody. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to be used. Maybe there's something that you can do to impart some encouragement or help or something to somebody. Spiritual gifts. We're not talking about you bought them a new spoon or you bought a new tire for their car. Those are all good things, but there should be some things spiritually we impart to people. We should leave them with something to think about. And that's where I was at today in that funeral. I was so struck by what was done before me that I didn't know what to do. I've never been there. And I just said, Lord, I got to be able to leave something. I got to try to overcome what was just done. 1 Corinthians 12. You know this chapter, and along with chapter 14. We're not going to look into the chapter. I just want to read, I believe, just the first verse. 12:1. It says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. And then he goes down the list and gives them, and you know what? If you go through that list, somewhere you're going to find yourself. You will. You'll find yourself. And if you're not doing something with it, you should. We talk about gifts at this time of year and giving gifts at this time of year, and that's good, but is there something spiritual we could give somebody? Maybe you should sit down and write a letter. I told my wife today, and I'm going to do that to this particular family. I'm going to sit down and write them a letter and try to encourage them. You know, it was easy to be destructive. It was easy to find fault with it when you have to stop and realize if people don't have God and don't have church and don't have a Bible, what do they have? They have nothing. Really, they have nothing. It don't matter where you're at, what country you're in, what it is. If they don't have God, they don't have the Bible, they don't have a church, and they don't have leadership, what are they going to do? America kicked out our leadership 50, 60, 70 years ago, and we've just been gone downhill since then. Look at 2 Timothy with this thought in mind here. And I really thought, maybe I ought to do some more study in this. Maybe I don't. You know how easy it is to do spiritual or study on the surface? You just get what's on the surface, but you don't do anything with it. Sometimes if you sit down with a verse and you start to study it, I said I've been listening to Alexander Scorby. I opened the Bible on my computer so that I'm reading along with him. And I've just discovered some things, as he's reading, I'm going, wow, that's something. Because sometimes we just don't dig any deeper on something. We just leave it on the surface. And I promise you, this book is so deep, you'd never get out of it. 2 Timothy, that's what I said, I think. Did I not? And 1:16 says, 1:6, not 1:16. Wherefore I put thee in remembrance that thou stir up the gift of God, which is in thee by the putting on of my hands. So speaking of being ordained and having the hands laid on him, he said, stir that up. Once in a while you just need to stir up what God gave you. You just need to. And I think that's what happened to me today. I got stirred up. It isn't the way I like to get stirred up, but I got stirred up. And look at Ecclesiastes 3. We're talking about what kind of gifts are there. We're talking about people, spiritual gifts. And here in Ecclesiastes, I guess we got to go to the Old Testament to get one. Somewhere. In chapter 3, familiar chapter because of all the time to do this and the time to do that. Verse 13 says, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. Why should he do that? It's a gift of God. Now, I didn't have it happen to me, and I hope it don't. But my wife got it when she got the COVID. She lost the sense of taste and her appetite and anything. Normally, she gives me supper, and she always does a good job of fixing it, and I always enjoy it to the nth degree that I'm allowed. And then I go and sit down in the chair, and here's what I say, Brother Gordy. Is there anything else? It makes me have an appetite and want more, but I have to be careful, or I'll be the jolly man himself floating around at Christmas time. So here's where you can look at it, that life itself is a gift. God gave you life to enjoy. Enjoy your food, enjoy your family, enjoy, your friends, enjoy, whatever it may be there, because that's what God gave it to you for. I mean, Paul told us that in 1 Corinthians 7. We're not to abuse it, but we're to use the world. It's here. And it's a gift from God. It's not a gift you're giving him. He's a gift he gave you. If you have a good appetite, I guess you blame God, but if you have a good appetite, thank God. Why? He gave it to you to enjoy your food. If you have a life that's joyful, well, thank God for that. Why? He gave it to you. He wants you to enjoy life. The Lord doesn't want us to sit around moping all the time and looking like somebody's slapped us on both sides of the face. And sometimes people come to church, I see them, they'll come here and they sit down. man, if there's any place to be joyful, this ought to be the place. You say, well, I don't feel joyful. Well, I don't feel joyful tonight either after today, but I'm trying to be joyful. Okay? Sometimes you just got to say, well, despite what all happened, I'm going to be joyful anyways. Okay. Well, Paul in 1 Corinthians 9, I'm not going to turn there, I believe that's where it's at. He's about the unspeakable gift. All right, let's look at this gift here these wise men brought, and we're going to just talk about them a little bit, and then we're going to be done. The wise men brought 3 gifts, so I titled this part, What Gift Will You Offer? Okay, so we know that what a gift is. We got the definition. We know what kinds of gifts there are. We didn't look at all of them, but we know there's spiritual gifts, and there's physical gifts, and there's gifts that God gave us, okay? And we know the gift of enjoying your food. We know there's a lot of things that God gave us. But these men brought 3 gifts, and we're going to look at how they can work out in our life. The first one we're going to look at is gold. And I don't think I need to explain to you the worth of gold or anything of that sort. You know, in our economy, they're trying to get back. I don't know, President Trump was supposed to reinstate it. I don't think he got to do that. I don't know that for a fact. But years ago, 50-something, we went off of the gold standard. And ever since then, your dollar bill's been worth about nothing. And what makes your money worth anything is the standard on which supports it. And we had the gold standard, backed by gold. If we had $1 million in the market, then we'd have $1 million worth of gold to back that up. And what happens when they start printing money, like they're doing right now, is you get inflation because there's nothing to back up the print. It's just like a Monopoly game. So let's go to 1 Corinthians 3 a minute. And again, a passage you're familiar with, but let's look at it from perhaps a different way. He said, now if a man, verse 12, now if a man build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stone, wood, hay, stubble, and so forth and so on. The gold, of course, being first, is deity. Gold represents deity. So something that's lasting, you can put it in the furnace and all you do is refine it. You don't burn it up, you don't waste it, you just refine it. So the more you cook the gold, the more you refine the elements in it that don't need to be in there. Gold represents things done for the sake of God, whatever that may be. Passing out tracts, minister to somebody, whatever it may, everything that you do for the Lord is considered a gift of gold. Maybe you do that by getting him the honor. Maybe being more important than your family or your friends or your cars or all your toys. Do you thank him or give him credit when things change for better in life? I'm going to drop a shoe on you here. Because most of us do when it goes wrong. We don't seem to remember to thank God when it goes right, but when it goes wrong, we say, what did God do that? Maybe he didn't. Maybe you did it to yourself. Yes. I think we have a lot of self-inflicted wounds. We want to blame somebody else. We want to find fault with somebody else, but it's really just ourselves. We've got our feelings hurt or somebody said something that crossed us wrong. Here's the question you need to ask yourself. What will I have to present to him at the judgment? You got your choice. You got gold, silver, precious stone, wood, hay, stubble. That's 6 choices. That's not bad. Except the last 3. They're not going to make it through the fire. So when we do things for God, with him in mind, for his purpose, for his glory, for his honor, not for ourselves, not pat me on the back, then that's gold. You're putting away gold. What was the second gift that was brought to him? Frankincense. Frankincense, by the way, equals worship. It equals reverence or devotion to God or the intense love or admiration of any kind. It was used by the worshiper on the sacrifices as well as on the worshiper And to falsify it meant that they were cut off from the people. Turn back to Exodus 30 a minute. Maybe you didn't take into consideration the importance of this frankincense. Exodus 30. All right, let's go to verse 34. And the Lord said unto Moses, take the sweet spices, steak and whatever them are, and gobalum, these sweet spices with pure frankincense, there it is, and each shall make a like weight. So he says, and thou shalt make it as the perfume, a confection after the art of the apothecary, and tempered together, pure and holy. And thou shalt beat some of it, very small, and put it on before the testimony in the tabernacle of the congregation, where I will meet with thee, and it shall be unto thee most holy. So it's something used in worship, right? And as for the perfume which thou shalt not make it to yourself, according to the composition thereof. It shall be unto thee holy for the Lord. Whosoever shall make like unto it to smell thereof shall be cut off from the people. So you couldn't make your incense, you couldn't make your perfume the way you wanted it. To do that was false worship, and it would cut you off from the people. See, people don't realize that we don't have a choice sometimes how we have to do things. God's already laid out what needs to be done. To change that is to falsify it. When you falsify it, it's not the same as what it should have been. And that would get them cut off from the people. It'd be a false apothecary. And so we've got to realize something. When we worship God, people say, well, you got your way and we've got to wait. Well, we've got a Bible way, and the Bible way says that they that worship God must worship him in spirit and truth. All your fancy stuff that you do don't mean anything to God. As a matter of fact, didn't he say, away with it? Then he told them, away with your sacrifices, away with your offerings. And I know sometimes it's old-fashioned. I know sometimes it doesn't fit what people like. I don't know if you've ever done this, but sometimes you ought to listen to the music of the world, listen to the music of the Christian world, and then listen to a good CD of a church singing hymns and see if there isn't a difference. See if there isn't a difference. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm just saying is they're trying to worship in their own way. And when you do, you get away from God's way, then that's a false worship. Do you know how the world worships? I think you do. They give of their time and their talent and their money to whatever they believe in. They talk about it, they read about it, they sleep on it, they eat around it, they devote hours and hours to it. You've never known anybody that was given to entertainment, whatever style it may be, who just did it when they felt like it. They will do it till they refine it to exactly how they want it. And then the church looks out here and says, well, look at that, they're drawing a crowd. Yes, false worship always draws a crowd. Turn over to 1 Kings a minute. 1 Kings chapter 16. And let's see here. Verse 31. And it came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidons, and they went and served Baal and worshipped him. Baal worship included the sacrifice of children as well as, get my page over here, the giving of the best they had. And it required kissing Baal and praying to him and all the rest that goes along with that style of worship. Now it may look, if you ever watch a funeral that's done in a religious fashion, it's beautiful, It's orderly, but it's deader than last week's ox. Because it's done in their way, their fashion. That's the way they think they ought to do it. Turn over to Revelation chapter 4 a minute. We're talking about frankincense, which represents worship. And you might notice we call our service here on Sunday morning service. We don't call it the worship service. Why? Because most people aren't worshiping. I want you to get it wrong. I'm not against it. I'm not saying it's wrong to say that. I'm just saying we have to be so careful because we get in this mode of calling things something simply because everybody else does that. Well, that doesn't make it right just because everybody else is doing it. At least that's what my mother always said. Revelation 4, look at verse 10. And the 24 elders fell down before him and sat on the throne and worshipped him that liveth forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, Thou art worthy, O Lord. Wow. Look over into chapter 7 a minute. Verse 11, and all the angels stood around about the throne, about the elders and the four beasts, and fell down before the throne on their faces and worshiped God. Wouldn't that be a sight? Wouldn't that be a sight to see a church full of people laying on the floor on their faces crying out to God? Wouldn't that be a sight, man? Amen. Probably not going to happen, but that would be a sight. Get accused of a lot of things over there. When was the last time you found yourself in the position of laying on the floor? I had a guy tell me this. Well, he told me a whole lot of other things too, but you ever meet one of those Bible scholars that knows everything about what the Bible says about whatever it says, but he doesn't get any of it right when he tells you? He told me, he said, I don't get anything done when I get in a private closet. He said, I just talk to him all the time, standing up. I'm thinking, so no matter what he told you about the private closet, you're not going to do it because I get a little tired of people that know all the answers. Jesus said that when we worship him, we must worship him in spirit and in truth. When was the last time you worshiped? I'm not finding fault with you. I'm asking a question. If we worship him in spirit and in truth, when was the last time we really worshiped? Because people come to church and they sit and they listen, and sometimes they follow the Bible, sometimes they don't, sometimes they sing, sometimes they don't, and yet they would say they went to worship. I think if you go to worship, you're going to involve yourself into whatever it is you're doing. I don't mean when you went to church or when you read your Bible or even when you prayed for your meal. When was the last time you got alone with God and just worshiped him? Amen. Somebody told me, and of course, I don't have any facts on this, but they said that they traveled, there was a guy that traveled with John R. Rice many years ago. And he said he never thought about it, but once in a while he'd hear something. He thought, well, man, the old man must be having a dream, and he's talking in his dreams. So he said the guy finally one night said he couldn't stand it any longer, so when he heard it going on, he said he kind of got up, and from the light that was coming in the window, briefly he saw the old John R. Rice over there laying on the ground. And all he was doing was saying, oh, God. Oh, God. And sometimes we think we have to have a 17-line prayer. Maybe sometimes you just need to get on your face and say, oh, God. What will your record of worship be at the judgment? Will there be any frankincense at that judgment? What was the last one? Myrrh. And I don't think I need to tell you that myrrh equals suffering. No one likes myrrh. Nobody likes to suffer. Nobody likes it when things aren't nice, when things aren't pleasant, when things aren't peaceful. But turn over to Philippians chapter 1 a minute. Philippians chapter 1. I'll get there. Verse 29. For unto you it is given in the behalf of Christ not only to believe on him, but also to suffer for his sake. Now, I don't like that verse. You don't like that verse, but that verse is in your Bible. And it tells you that we're not just supposed to be saved. It's not part of our salvation, just saved and everything's fine and dandy. The guy told me once, he said, ever since I've been saved, everything's been perfect. I wanted to say to him, I don't think you got saved. That's not, according to my Bible, you can't get saved and not have some troubles to come along in your life. And he said this, he said, but also to suffer. And it's not for, you're not suffering for yourself. It's not something that you, listen, some people suffer, but they do it to themselves. You're suffering for sake. Maybe you said something and somebody picks on you every time you turn around. Hey, there's the reverend again. All right, if you're suffering for his name, that's fine. There's nothing to be ashamed of there. Look over to 1 Thessalonians a minute. 1 Thessalonians chapter 3. And look at verse 3. That no man should be moved by these afflictions. For yourselves know that we are appointed thereunto. For verily, when we were with you, we told you before that we should suffer tribulation, even as it came to pass, and you know. Now, I'm not going to take time to explain the whole thing. I think you can figure that out. Paul said, we told you that when you got saved, we told you that it's a part of the life of the saint. Expect that you're going to get some suffering. It's just what comes with it. A lot of people quit. Well, it ain't worth it anymore. You know, nothing's gone right since I got saved. I don't think that's the truth, but it seems like it. Look at Acts 5. Again, you're not necessarily unfamiliar with any of these I'm giving you, but I just want you to see them. Acts 5. Acts 5. And you know this. Look at verse 42. And daily in the temple. Oh, wait a minute. That's not what I want. I want 5:29. Okay. Oh, no. It's verse 41. I'm sorry. Verse 41. And they departed from the presence of the council, rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer shame for his name. Counted worthy? Wow. None of us like to be picked on. None of us like that kind of stuff. I told my son the other night was talk about things that we've done that got us in trouble. And I was a preacher's kid, and when I go to school, I was called Rev. Hey, Rev. And so, Brother Gordy, I got a bag of my dad's 16-pound nails, and I took and typed them into a board. I tacked them all in there, and I spelt the word Rev. My dad came and said, did you do that? I said, yeah. He said, well, then you can pull them all out. Plus, I got a spanking for using his nail. But anyways, we don't like to suffer. We don't like to be picked on. We don't like to, but it's part of being a Christian. And the sooner you can learn that in your life, the younger you can learn that in your life, that it's just part of what goes on being a Christian. It's not because they hate you, it's because they hate him. A lot of times people don't dislike me, they just dislike the Lord. And especially if you follow the Lord and you go in the right path, they don't like that. They want you to go their way. Well, let's look at one more here. Romans 8. Romans 8. Verse 17. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ. If so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. So we all want the glory, but along with the glory comes the suffering. So don't take it personal. When things come your way, there might be some gold, might be some frankincense, and there'll definitely be some myrrh. But that's what was given to our Savior. And of course, you know how that all types out in his life. And it should type out in yours the same way. Because when you give, you're giving of yourself. And you're saying, Lord, whatever you want to do with me, find Danny. Father, bless these folks. They've endured my rantings here tonight. I pray that you'd encourage them in things of the Lord. And Lord, some of our folks are sick. And maybe some just tired tonight, couldn't get out. I don't know. But please be with them and encourage their